Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 223. I'm so glad you are here. Today I'm talking about kind of the difference between a strength-based approach to education and a deficits-based approach to education, just to kind of clarify the difference between the two and to kind of show you what a deficits-based approach, which is kind of the traditional approach to learning, where you focus on what's wrong and fix it, instead of focus on what everybody is good at and build them up from there, and how that affects our kids and what the positives to a strength-based approach are. In some ways, you can incorporate a strength-based approach in your homeschool today. So I hope that you get a lot out of this episode, and I would love it if you would send me a message at the end and let me know some of the things that you do to cultivate a strength-based approach to learning in your homeschool and other things I may have missed. Special shout out and thanks to CTC Math, our season-long sponsor. We appreciate their support and their help in bringing episodes like this to you. Okay, let's get on with this episode. Pop your earbuds in, go for a walk, take a break, enjoy, and I hope you learn something from this episode and that it cultivates tons of different ideas in you that you can then share with the rest of us, because we're truly better together and we can lift each other up. All right, let's get on with today's episode. Okay, so we've talked on this podcast before about strength-based learning and why I think it's so important. But I want to talk a little bit more. I want to dive a little bit deeper into kind of the difference between a strength-based approach to learning and teaching our kids versus a deficits-based approach to learning and teaching our kids. Just so that we have kind of a clear idea of what the difference is and why strength-based learning is so important and so good for our kids. So first, in a nutshell, a strength-based learning approach focuses more on abilities, whereas a deficits-based approach to education, which is kind of what most of the traditional model of education is focused on weaknesses. So in a strength-based education approach, we are identifying and nurturing the individual strengths, talents, and abilities of our kiddos. We want to build on what kids do well and leverage those positive attributes and abilities to enhance their learning and development. Whereas in a traditional model of education that focuses more on a deficits-based approach, they tend to concentrate on identifying and addressing kids' weaknesses, their learning difficulties, or their areas of deficit. So the emphasis tends to be on remediation or intervention to overcome their perceived shortcomings. And I say perceived intentionally. We have to remember that our kids develop at different rates. The idea of that deficits-based approach to education is that it stems from the expectation that we need to get our kids ready by the end of a school year to move on to the next grade level, and all kids kind of like grow and learn and develop at the same rate. And it forgets, it throws out the idea that, we're not raising little robots or widgets, we're raising children, human beings, and human beings are neurodiverse. They all have brains that are wired in different ways. Whether they are neurotypical or neurodivergent, their brains are still wired differently from one another, and they learn things at different paces. They get interested in different things. And so while I get it, as one that was once in a classroom who had a whole bunch of children to teach and needed to get them to a certain point by the end of the year in order to be able to say I did my job, I feel for those children who are focused on or being made to focus on the areas in which they're weaker more often than the areas in which they're stronger. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of what that does to their psyche as we go along. But let's talk a little bit more about kind of the differences between the two. A strength-based approach also kind of encourages positive reinforcement. It celebrates achievements. Parents, teachers, educators, whomever who are focusing on kind of a strength-based approach to education create an environment where kids feel valued and empowered. They are encouraged to use their strengths to overcome their challenges, whereas in a more traditional or deficits-based approach, they are focused on correction and remediation strategies in order to address those deficiencies. The focus is on bringing students up to a certain standard or a level of proficiency and not meeting them where they are. It's all about them being behind and needing to catch up. And so the strength-based approach, when we're focusing on that positive reinforcement and celebrating achievement, is also building confidence and self-esteem and positive self-awareness and concept in kids. When we acknowledge and develop their strengths, kids are more likely to feel a sense of accomplishment and confidence in their abilities, whereas when we focus on identifying and addressing challenges or gaps, we are focused constantly on the things that kids are bad at and need more support in. And so they are constantly working to overcome obstacles and improve in areas where they're struggling. And so they don't get to the areas where they're strong. So their confidence starts to lag because they're always feeling like they're behind and need to fix something. Strength-based education also takes a more holistic approach to education. It considers the overall development of the child, where a strength-based educator is cultivating kind of a well-rounded kiddo who can apply their strengths in various aspects of life. One example that I've given in the past of this is, let's say your child is a good speaker and articulate, right? This is an area of strength that they have. They're not really strong in writing, but getting ideas out verbally, they're amazing. And so we could approach their deficits through their strengths. And instead of having them write out the answer to an essay question on paper and pencil or typing it straight out, they could dictate it or talk to you as if they were presenting it, along with their support and their thesis and their support and their conclusion, and it can be recorded and transcribed. And then you can sit down with them side by side and go back through and edit the work. So they're still they're verbally processing, which is a strength for them, but they're still doing what needs to be done, but they're using their strengths to solve the problem of their weaknesses. And so when we focus on a strength-based approach to education, we give them that more holistic development and approach so they know how to use their strengths to approach and work on their deficits. Whereas a deficits-based approach to that kind of scenario would be more targeted and address the specific learning gap or weakness, where we would kind of drill them on the parts of an essay and have them write a certain number of topic sentences, and then for every topic sentence, come up with a couple of supporting sentences, and then for every topic sentence and supporting sentence section or grouping, come up with a conclusion sentence. And so we give them more work in the area of deficit instead of finding a way to use their strength to still have the outcome we want, which essentially is writing an essay. In practice, the balanced approach that recognizes kind of both their strengths and weaknesses is ideal, but an emphasis on the strengths to serve their weaknesses and them through their strengths well can have significant impact on their social and emotional development. So here are some of those advantages. Here's some of that positive that comes when we take a balanced approach. So we are working on weaknesses, but we're doing it through working on their strengths we're working through their strengths instead of through their deficits. Well, when we have a more strength-based approach to education in our homeschool for our kiddos, the overall learning environment is improved and gives our kids certain advantages that truthfully can kind of see them through all sorts of challenges as they grow. They often have an increased motivation and engagement in their learning. When we recognize and build on our kiddos' strengths, it increases their motivation to learn. When they feel that their abilities are valued, they're more likely to engage actively in the learning process because they know that we're looking for things that build them up and giving them more and more opportunities to grow. It boosts their self-esteem and confidence. We talked a little bit about this already, but focusing on strengths helps our kiddos develop a positive self-concept. As they experience success more and more and more and get recognition for their abilities through conversations or your positive feedback, their self-esteem and confidence increase, contributing to a more positive attitude towards learning and towards themselves. A strength-based approach to learning also allows us to have a more personalized and individualized learning environment for our kids. We are looking at our kids holistically, but individually, so we can target what each of our kids needs in turn. When we're emphasizing our kiddos' strengths like this, they learn to view challenges as opportunities for growth. It really does contribute to a growth mindset, and we've talked about that on the podcast before, and we'll link to some episodes regarding that or some articles related to growth mindset in the show notes, so check those out. But when we emphasize their strengths and they learn to see challenges as opportunities for growth, they grow in resilience and have a more openness and will to persevere through difficulties. They're aware of their abilities to overcome obstacles. They see failure or they see challenges as an opportunity for growth, for learning instead of as a failure. It also encourages positive relationships between you and your kids because you're not constantly at odds, but it also encourages positive relationships all around. They start to acknowledge and appreciate the strengths and interests of those around them. It builds trust and rapport with their siblings, with family members, with friends, because they start to notice what others are good at, and it's not a source of stress or comparison anymore. It's, this is who I am and this is who you are, and it's great because we have a better whole when we're together. And when we teach them to focus on their own strengths and others' strengths around them, they have a better development of well-roundedness. They're able to apply their abilities in various contexts and have tremendous personal and academic growth related to it. And they develop stronger relationships with others. They have long-term success. Research shows that resilient individuals, confident individuals, have a stronger sense of self-esteem and self-worth, which then contributes to overall success in whatever their work environment is going to be. It sets a foundation for that long-term success. So as kiddos develop and apply their strengths, they're better equipped to pursue their interests. They are more likely to set and achieve goals and navigate future challenges. They also, and this is one of the keys, as you know, this podcast and my website are called Raising Lifelong Learners. A love of learning is something I want to instill in my kids. I want them to know when they leave our home that anything they want to learn is just like an asked question or a Google search or a streaming video or a book read away from being found out. And so when we focus on their strengths and we teach them to kind of shore up their weaknesses through the areas of strength that they have, they develop a healthier relationship with learning. It makes the learning process more enjoyable, and when they're engaged in activities that align with their strengths, they're more likely to experience a sense of joy and fulfillment when it comes to academics, which prepares them for a lifetime of learning. Okay, you have heard me talk for the last year and a half about CTC Math. The reason I keep talking about it is that they really are a fabulous choice for homeschool math. We are customers. I have been using CTC Math for several years. I pay for my own subscription and am an incredibly happy customer and consumer of the program. My youngest two use CTC, and it's perfect for both of their very different math experiences. One of my kids is a math go-getter and is a year ahead in math and prides himself on the fact that he can speed through it and do extra lessons to get ahead. We have all of the grade levels from kindergarten all the way to calculus at our fingertips, so he can progress as quickly as he wants to progress, and he loves it. My other one sometimes takes 2 or 3 tries at a lesson because some concepts click pretty quickly and some concepts don't. And she has the flexibility to approach math in any way she needs to. The best part too is the folks at CTC Math are so helpful. They want you to succeed. There was one time where we just could not understand what they were saying and how it was going and how it needed to be explained. And we watched a couple of videos on YouTube, and just as a last-ditch effort, I emailed the support team there and I said, look, I am having so much trouble explaining this to my kiddo. Can you just break it down for me in another way? And they did. They want you to be successful. In fact, CTC Math is so convinced they can help you and your kiddo be successful that they have a lifetime money-back guarantee. Like, what company does that? They want you to be satisfied. They want your kid to learn. That is incredible, and that is a company I want to support. So check them out at ctcmath.com or go over to the show notes for this episode and click on the link. Let them know I sent you. Ask them questions. They are there to support you. ctcmath.com. CTC is the best, filled with the best people. All right, let's get back to today's episode. They have that positive attitude towards learning and problem solving, and they're more likely to approach those new challenges as they grow with a growth mindset and a willingness to learn. A strength-based education doesn't just benefit kids academically. It contributes to their overall well-being and personal development, and it creates a positive, supportive homeschool and life that follows them as they grow. So what are some things that we can do in our homeschool to support this idea of a strength-based approach to learning and cultivate that lifelong love of learning in our kids? Okay, so here are some things that you could do right now. You can implement one or many of these and just incorporate them a little bit at a time, but you will see an improvement and you'll see the benefits. So the first suggestion that I have for you is to identify and celebrate strengths. Take time to observe and identify your kiddo's strengths. I've talked about this before. You can probably find a dozen posts and references and podcasts. We'll link some in the show notes related to the idea of becoming a student of your child. When you're observing your kid, you're really looking at who they are and what makes them tick so you can use that information to support them. Their strengths can be academic, artistic, athletic, social, or any other area in which they excel. Celebrate and acknowledge these strengths regularly. Give them opportunities to shine and let them know you see them shine. Let them know. Brag about them to others within their earshot. Let others know how great your kids are. If you're not bragging about them, nobody is. Brag about your kids. It is your job to make them know that they're the coolest people ever, and you're so grateful that they're yours. You can also individualize. Now, I'm not saying you have to have a separate curriculum for every single kid and every single thing. You can certainly lump things together, and if one kid is an animal lover and another kid is like a robotics lover, you can have the robotics lover learn about animals for a semester or a couple weeks and then switch. But think about what you can do to cater to your kids' interests and strengths. Tailor your curriculum choices to incorporate activities and projects that align with the things your kiddo enjoys doing and things that they excel in. And one of the ways that you can do that is you can encourage passion projects. You can give your kiddo a chance to pursue passion projects, things that involve a deep dive into a subject they're particularly interested in, or work on a long-term project that aligns with their strengths and passions. I'll give you an example of this. In the next semester, so this podcast episode is airing in December, and we've had a really kind of crazy start to our school year. And by that, I just mean it's been busy. I've been working on a book project. I'll be telling you more about that in the coming months, but I have a brand new book that is coming out in July of 2024. Super excited about it. But that takes a lot of time. So we have been really focusing on like the must-dos of our homeschool. So like basic reading, writing, arithmetic, and then some, chores to keep the house from falling apart around us, but no major big extras, except for the things that they go out of the house for. One of my kids takes a hip hop class, several take acting classes and voice lessons and dance classes. And then the younger two kids, my 10 and 14-year-old, are taking a class at a local farm called Homeschooling with Horses. A lot of fun, actually. And they do all sorts of different things in the barn, all centered around horses, but it's not like a riding lesson. So anyway, most of the stuff that they've been doing at home has been basic stuff, just their regular core subject areas. So in January, we are going to be doing some things that tap into their individual interests. One of my kids is very, very, very much into animals. And she also is interested. We're going to do some history projects, and we're going to focus on an animal that she's interested in. And then my other one is very into computers and coding and things like that. And I have a couple kits that I got from a subscription company to test out, and I haven't had a chance to really test them yet, so I'm not going to mention their name until I kind of take a look at them, but they look very promising. And so with one of them, we're going to build a set of walkie-talkies that are coded to text, including emojis and things like that. So we're going to try that, and I forget what the other one is, but it's another kind of like mini coding activity. And so we're going to focus on some long-term projects related to the things that they're super interested in. You can also build on their strengths by fostering a positive learning environment. And by that, I just mean being supportive at home. Encourage open communication, provide constructive feedback, emphasize effort and progress over perfection so our kids don't get hung up on outcome and they learn to focus on the process and the progress and not just what the product is. And to do this, you want to really talk about a growth mindset. And this, for some of our kids, especially if you're listening to this and you, like me, have neurodivergent children. Some of our neurodivergent kiddos are differently wired kiddos, are gifted, are twice exceptional kids, can be very rigid in their thinking and can have a very limited mindset. And so we want to encourage growth mindset. We want to discourage perfectionism and help them grow past that. We want them to understand that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. You can talk to them if they're scientifically minded about neuroplasticity. And we want to encourage them in a growth mindset because it helps to develop resilience and allows them to kind of bounce back from challenges so that they can then use those strengths to address some of the challenges that they're having, like that example I used earlier about essay writing. If your kid is a very verbal person, the act of writing an essay is really the act of answering the essay question or prompt and getting ideas and support down on paper. And so you can let them dictate that through their verbal processing and then go back and edit it. So you want to help them learn to use their strengths to address their challenges and apply their strengths in creative ways. You can also help your kids develop a more strength-based approach to learning so if your kiddo has strengths in a particular subject, encourage them to share their knowledge with their siblings or friends or homeschooling groups, or to join in programs like the Homeschooling with Horses class that I talked about, giving them an opportunity to kind of showcase the things that they're good at. Here's a key one too, and this is one you can do right now, especially if you're listening to this when this episode airs and it's around the holiday time, because you're about to take a little bit of a break and then kind of regroup in January. So it's the perfect time. Offer your kiddos some choice in the learning process. Give them an opportunity to give you feedback on things that they want to learn about or want to do more of, and see if you can work over the next couple weeks to create something that they can do so that they have a say in what they learn about. So for example, One of the reasons we'll be doing a little bit more history is because my 14-year-old feels that she needs to learn some more history. So I'm listening to her feedback about the idea that she wants some more history, formal history learning, and I'm going to provide that. So listen to them, empower them, give them a sense of ownership in their learning. And when you can, connect their learning to real-world applications. Show your kiddo how their strengths can be applied in real-world situations. Help them make connections between what they're learning and how it relates to their interests, their future goals, or potential career paths. When you can, encourage regular reflection with your kiddos. Chat about their achievements, their challenges, the areas in which they feel confident. When you reflect and you teach them to reflect, they become more self-aware and more appreciative of their own strengths, more aware of what they're good at instead of always focusing on what they're not so good at. And then to that end, try to model a positive attitude towards learning yourself. Demonstrate that you are constantly learning and you are seeking personal growth. Share stories of your own challenges, how you overcame them through perseverance and using your strengths. Let them see you learning about something new. Let them see you reading books that are not just fiction, that are nonfiction, so that they see that you're learning about a topic. Talk to them about the different things you're learning. Ask them to teach you things. And then celebrate progress and effort. Like I said before, place an emphasis on progress and effort rather than just on outcome, and celebrate the small victories. Encourage your kiddo to take pride in their hard work and dedication, and give them lots and lots of different types of learning resources, things that cater to their different learning styles and preferences and their different interests, so that they have an opportunity to explore and engage with content in various ways that both align with their strengths and their weaknesses and give them multiple opportunities to grow. Remember, a strength-based approach to education is really about recognizing and building on what your kiddo does well. When you incorporate some of these strategies that I just gave you and you think about the positives that come from a strength-based approach and the comparison between a strength-based and a deficit-based approach, you're creating a homeschooling environment that not only supports their academic growth, but fosters a positive mindset, which in turn leads to that lifelong love of learning that we want for our kids. All right. I would love if you would share some of the strategies you use to capitalize on your kiddo's strengths. And to do that, you can go to the show notes for this episode at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast and scroll down to the bottom. There is a link to our contact form, which is just an email. So you click on it, you fill out a little form, and it goes straight to my inbox. So you can send me an email about the kinds of things you do to foster a more strength-based approach to learning within your own home. You can also, at the bottom of the show notes, leave a voicemail message. And your voicemail message can be up to 5 minutes, and I will respond to you. So go over and leave me a voicemail about the things you do to foster a strength-based learning approach and a lifelong love of learning in your kids. Okay, and if you're listening to this in real time, I hope that the holiday season is kicking off well for you and that you and your kids are regulated and enjoying one another and taking time to really enjoy the adventure of the season. We'll be back next week with another episode, an interview this time. I can't wait to share it with you, and I appreciate you. You have so many different ways that you can spend your time, and I appreciate that you take time to listen to the podcast. If you get a chance, leave a rating or review over on Apple Podcasts or any of the podcast apps where you listen. It really helps get the word out about this show, and I appreciate it. I can't wait to hear from you about the different things that help you cultivate a strength-based approach to learning. And I hope you have a great week with your kids. Enjoy them and enjoy your homeschooling adventure. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.